The man in the parking garage is going to hurt me. I can feel it the way you can feel a storm coming, that electric charge in the air that tells you something terrible is about to happen. He's backing me toward the concrete pillar, and his smile is the kind that would look charming if his hand wasn't wrapped around my wrist so tight. I can feel my pulse beating against his grip. "You shouldn't have talked to the police," he says softly. "That was very stupid, Sarah. Very stupid indeed. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm a 32-year-old data analyst who works for a pharmaceutical company. I have a mortgage and a cat and a subscription to a meditation app I never use. I'm not supposed to be in situations where men hurt me in parking garages. But I talked to the police. Not intentionally. Not because I wanted to. But my boss, a man named Robert Chen, he'd been doing something with the company's finances that didn't add up. Millions of dollars moving into accounts that didn't exist. And when I questioned it, he'd laughed and told me I was too clever for my own good, that I should learn when to mind my business. Then the FBI showed up at my apartment. I didn't tell them much, just that the numbers seemed wrong, that accounts I'd never seen before were being created and destroyed, that I wasn't sure what was happening, but it felt illegal. The FBI agent had smiled and given me his card. "If you remember anything," he'd said, "you call me." I hadn't planned to, but 2 weeks later, there was a man waiting for me in my car. Robert Chen, except not exactly. He'd introduced himself as someone who worked for Robert Chen, someone who was very concerned about my cooperation with federal agents. And now, in this parking garage, his hand is around my wrist, and his smile is all teeth. "Please," I say, and my voice is embarrassingly small. I didn't tell them anything important. I just said the accounts seemed wrong. That's all. "That's all," he repeats like I've said something amusing. "That's all is enough to destroy everything Robert has built. That's all is enough to land very important people in prison." He's raising his other hand, and I realize with a clarity born of terror that he's actually going to hit me. That this is really happening. That I'm going to get hurt in this parking garage, and nobody knows I'm here, and my scream is probably going to bounce off concrete and echo uselessly into the night. Then a voice cuts through the darkness. "Let her go." The man turns, and I see genuine fear flicker across his face for the first time. The kind of fear that suggests the person making the demand is someone dangerous, someone important, someone who doesn't make threats lightly. I can't see the speaker clearly. He's standing in the shadows between two pillars, but I can see his silhouette. Tall, broad shoulders, dressed in what looks like an expensive suit, even in this terrible light. "This doesn't concern you," the man holding my wrist says, but his voice has changed. It's less confident now, more cautious. "It concerns me now," the silhouette says calmly, "because you're going to let her go, and then you're going to walk to your car, and you're never going to approach her again. You're going to tell Robert that Sarah is off limits, and if I hear that you've violated this arrangement, I'm going to have to respond in ways that would be very inconvenient for everyone involved." The grip on my wrist loosens. "You don't understand," the man says desperately. Robert will understand perfectly." The silhouette interrupts, "because I'm going to explain it to him. Now go." The man releases my wrist and practically runs toward the elevators. I stand there, rubbing my arm, trying to understand what just happened. A stranger appeared in a parking garage and made a threat so casually, so certainly, that a man who was seconds away from hitting me just left. The silhouette steps forward, and the parking garage lights catch his face. He's black, tall, devastatingly handsome in the way that suggests someone who's never had to try very hard to be attractive. But what strikes me most is his expression. There's no anger in his face, no residual aggression, just a kind of calm certainty, like he's simply fixed a small problem, and now he's moving on. He's wearing a suit, a three-piece suit, in a parking garage. At midnight. "Are you all right?" he asks. Yes, I say, which is a lie. I'm shaking. My wrist is throbbing. My heart is beating so hard, I'm pretty sure he can see it. "Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't. You were going to get hurt," he says simply. "I couldn't allow that." "You couldn't allow it?" I repeat. "You don't know me. You don't have any obligation to." "I know Robert Chen," he says, and something shifts in his voice. It becomes sharper, more dangerous. I know what he does, and I know that anyone stupid enough to report him to the FBI is either very brave or very foolish. I'm guessing you're neither. You're just someone who noticed something she shouldn't have noticed, and now she's paying the price. "Who are you?" I ask. He smiles, and it's the kind of smile that doesn't reach his eyes. "Someone who fixes problems. You were becoming a problem. Now, you're not." "That's not an answer," I say, which is probably stupid given that this man just made someone twice my size back down with a single sentence. "No," he agrees. "But it's the only answer you're going to get right now." "What's your name?" "Sarah," I say. "Sarah Mitchell. Sarah," he repeats, like he's committing it to memory. "I'm going to give you my number, and if anyone approaches you again, if anyone so much as looks at you wrong, you're going to call me. Do you understand?" "I don't understand anything," I say. "I don't understand who you are or why you're helping me, or why you're standing in a parking garage at midnight in a suit." He reaches into his jacket, and I flinch. But he just pulls out a business card. It's elegant, simple, just a phone number embossed in silver. No name, no company, just 10 digits. "Call this number if you need me," he says. "Don't call if you don't. But if you do, I'll answer." He places the card in my hand, and his fingers brush against my palm. His touch is warm, and there's something in it that feels like a promise. "I still don't know your name," I say. "No," he agrees. "You don't, and you probably shouldn't. It would be safer for you if you didn't." Then he walks away, disappearing into the darkness of the parking garage, like he was never there at all. I stand there, holding the business card, and I realize that I've just been saved by someone I know nothing about. Someone dangerous. Someone who made a threat so casually, so certainly, that a man who was seconds away from beating me up simply complied. I look down at the card in my hand. Just a number. No name. No way to know who this person is or why he was in that parking garage or why he decided to intervene on behalf of a stranger. I should throw the card away. I should call the FBI agent and tell him what happened. I should do everything right and proper and sensible. Instead, I slip the card into my pocket and I drive home. And I spend the entire night wondering who the man in the suit is and why he decided to save me. 3 days pass without incident. I go to work. I do my job. And I try very hard not to think about the man in the parking garage or the business card sitting on my nightstand. Nobody approaches me. Nobody threatens me. It's as if the incident never happened. Except for the card. The card is real. The card reminds me every night that something happened that doesn't make sense. On the fourth day, my boss calls me into his office. Robert Chen looks different, older, more tired, like he hasn't slept in several days. He's sitting at his desk, and he doesn't ask me to sit down. I heard there was an incident in the parking garage, he says carefully. My stomach drops. How did you? It doesn't matter how I found out. He interrupts. What matters is that you're going to stop talking to the FBI. You're going to stop asking questions about the accounts. And you're going to forget that you ever noticed anything unusual. Or what? I ask, surprising myself with my boldness. Or nothing, Robert says, and there's something in his expression that's almost grateful, because someone very important has decided that you're not worth the trouble. Someone I'm very eager not to disappoint. So you're going to go back to your job, you're going to keep your head down, and you're going to never speak of this again. Who is this someone? I ask. Someone whose name I'm not going to tell you, Robert says. Someone you should be very grateful to, because he just saved your life. That night, I call the number on the card. He answers on the second ring, like he's been waiting for my call, like he knew, somehow, that I would eventually break down and reach out. Hello, Sarah, he says, and his voice is exactly as I remember it, calm, dangerous, certain. How did you make Robert back off? He finishes. That's between me and Robert. How are you? Are you safe? Yes, I say. He just wanted me to stop talking to the FBI, to stop asking questions. And will you? He asks. I don't know. I admit, I don't know what's the right thing to do. I don't know who you are, or what Robert is involved in, or what any of this means. Would you like to find out? He asks. Not really, I say. But I think I have to. He's quiet for a moment. There's a restaurant in Tribeca called Memento. Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. Ask for a reservation under the name Marcus. They'll have a table for you. Is this, I start, a date? He finishes. Not exactly, but it's an explanation, and you deserve one. I don't even know your name, I say. You will, he replies. Tomorrow night. The line goes dead. I spend the entire next day deciding what to wear. This is stupid. I shouldn't go. I should call the FBI and tell them everything, and let them handle it, and go back to my normal, safe, boring life. But I've spent 3 days wondering who the man in the suit is, and I've spent those 3 days replaying the moment he touched my hand. And I've spent those 3 days thinking about the way he said my name like it mattered. So I put on a black dress, nothing too fancy, nothing that suggests I'm trying too hard. I do my makeup carefully. I straighten my hair, and at 7:45, I arrive at Memento. The restaurant is exactly what I expected. Sophisticated, expensive. The kind of place where people with important money come to make important deals. A hostess greets me immediately. Sarah? She asks, like she's been expecting me. Yes, I say. Follow me, she says. She leads me to a private table in the back of the restaurant. He's already there, the man in the suit. Except now he's not in a parking garage, and the light isn't filtered through shadows. Now, I can see him clearly. He's even more handsome in good lighting. He has the kind of face that photographs probably can't do justice to. Sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that seem to see everything. Skin that's a beautiful deep brown. And he's wearing another suit, this one in charcoal gray, paired with a white shirt and a silver tie. Sarah, he says, standing up. Thank you for coming. I'm not sure I had a choice, I say as I sit down. He smiles. You always have a choice. You chose to call me. You chose to come here. Those were your decisions. Who are you? I ask. My name is Julian Ashford, he says. And before you ask, yes, that's my real name. Yes, I'm serious. And no, I'm not going to tell you what I do for a living. Not yet, but I will tell you why I saved you. A server appears with wine, red wine, expensive wine, the kind that probably costs more than my monthly car payment. He pours it without being asked, suggesting this is the order Julian gave in advance. Why did you save me? I ask. Because I saw you in that parking garage, and I realized that you have no idea what kind of danger you're actually in. Julian says, Robert Chen is involved in something much larger than you understand. And you've stumbled into the middle of it without any protection, without any understanding of the rules, without any way to defend yourself. So you appointed yourself my protector? I ask. Someone needed to, he says simply, and I happened to be in a position to do so. You still haven't told me who you are, I point out. I'm someone who works in finance, Julian says, which is technically true and completely unhelpful. I work with people like Robert Chen, people who operate in the spaces between legal and illegal. People who understand that laws are sometimes inconvenient obstacles to progress. You're a criminal, I say, finally understanding. I prefer to think of myself as an entrepreneur, Julian replies. But yes, if you want to use that word, I'm a criminal. A very successful one. A very careful one. A criminal who doesn't typically get involved in things that don't concern him. But I concern you? I ask. You do now, Julian says. He reaches across the table and takes my hand gently, and I need you to understand something. The world that Robert Chen operates in, the world that I operate in, it's dangerous. It's not forgiving. People who get involved in it tend to get hurt, but I'm offering you protection, real protection. As long as you're with me, nobody will touch you. Nobody will threaten you. Nobody will so much as look at you wrong. In exchange for what? I ask. Nothing yet, Julian says. Consider it an investment. In what? In you, he says simply. The dinner is extraordinary. The food is exquisite. The wine keeps flowing. And Julian asks me questions about myself like he actually cares about the answers. He asks about my childhood, about my parents, about what I wanted to be before I became a data analyst, about my dreams and my fears and the things that keep me awake at night. By the end of the evening, I feel like he knows me better than people I've known for years. Come home with me, he says as the server clears our plates. I don't think that's a good idea, I say, but I'm already calculating how to say yes without sounding like I'm desperate. I'm not asking you to sleep with me, Julian says, which is disappointing for reasons I don't want to examine too closely. I'm asking you to come see my world. I'm asking you to understand what you're getting into if you decide to trust me. And if I don't want to understand, I ask, then I'll take you home and I'll disappear from your life and you'll go back to being a target, Julian says. Robert will eventually get tired of being told to leave you alone. The FBI will eventually pressure you to testify, and you'll end up caught between two worlds, belonging to neither, safe in neither. He's right. I know he's right. The parking garage was just the beginning. Okay, I say. Show me your world. His apartment is in a building in Manhattan that probably costs more to maintain per month than I make in a year. The elevator opens directly into his space, and I step into what can only be described as a palace. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlook the entire city. The furniture is modern, expensive, carefully curated. The art on the walls is the kind of art you see in museums. And in the center of the living room is a piano, a grand piano, black, gleaming under the soft lighting. Do you play? I ask, walking toward it. No, Julian says. I bought it because it's beautiful. I surround myself with beautiful things. He's looking at me when he says it, and I understand that he's no longer talking about the piano. Why? I ask. Why would someone like you surround himself with beautiful things? Why would someone in your world care about aesthetics? Because beauty is the only thing that keeps us from disappearing entirely into the darkness, Julian says. Because if I didn't have beautiful things, I might actually notice the terrible things I do on a regular basis. He moves toward the window and stares out at the city below. From up here, the city looks small, manageable, like all the chaos and pain and suffering is just part of a beautiful pattern. I want to tell you something, Julian says quietly, and I need you to understand that I'm trusting you with information that could destroy my life if you chose to share it with the wrong people. Okay, I say. I'm not what you think I am. He continues. I'm not some sophisticated crime boss with a heart of gold. I'm not someone who saves people because I have some heroic impulse. I'm someone who has done terrible things. Someone who has hurt people. Someone who has built an empire on the suffering of others. Then why tell me this? I ask. Because you deserve to know what you're getting into, Julian says. Because if you're going to be with me, you need to do it with open eyes. You need to understand that I'm not a good man, that I'm capable of things that would make you sick if you knew the details, that loving me means accepting darkness as part of the package. He turns to look at me, and I see something raw in his expression, something vulnerable. So what are you asking? I ask. I'm asking if you can handle the truth, Julian says. I'm asking if you can love someone who's not lovable. I'm asking if you can accept that I saved you not because I'm a good person, but because you interest me. Because something about you makes me want to be better. Because when I look at you, I see the possibility of being someone other than what I've become. That's a lot, I say. I know, Julian says, and I'm not asking for an answer tonight. But I need you to know who I actually am before this goes any further. I need you to have the chance to walk away. What if I don't want to walk away? I ask. Then you're either brave or very foolish, Julian says, and I'm not sure which one I'm hoping for. He takes my hand and leads me to his bedroom. We don't have sex, but we lie together in the dark, and his arms are around me, and I can feel his heartbeat against my back. And for the first time since he saved me in that parking garage, I feel safe, even though nothing about this situation is safe. Even though I'm lying in the bed of a man who admits he's done terrible things. Even though every rational part of my brain is screaming that I'm making a terrible mistake. 3 months pass. I move into Julian's apartment. I quit my job. I stop talking to the FBI. I become, in every meaningful way, part of Julian's world. But he doesn't tell me what he does. Not exactly. I know he's involved in something illegal. I know it has to do with money. I know that people fear him. I know that he makes phone calls, and sometimes those calls end with someone losing everything. But the specific details remain hidden from me. At first, this bothers me. I ask questions. I try to figure out the pieces of the puzzle. But eventually, I stop asking. Because the less I know, the less complicit I feel, the less I have to actively choose between my morality and my desire to be with Julian. What I do know is that I'm falling in love with him. I know this because when he comes home late, smelling like expensive cologne and secrets, I don't ask where he's been. I just kiss him and pull him close and try to memorize the feeling of his body against mine. I know this because when he has a nightmare, which happens rarely, but when it does, it's terrifying. I hold him and don't ask what he dreamed about. I know this because I would do terrible things to protect him, and that terrifies me more than anything else in this situation. One evening, we're lying in bed, and he's tracing patterns on my skin. "Why do you stay?" he asks. I give you an easy answer, and I know it, but I want to hear you say it. "Because I love you," I say, "because being with you feels like the only real thing in my life. Because everything else feels hollow compared to this." "That's not a good reason," Julian says. "That's actually a terrible reason. That's the reason people end up destroyed." "I know," I say, "but it's the reason anyway." He rolls out of bed and walks to the window. He stands there naked, looking out at the city, and I realize that despite everything he's told me, despite all the danger, despite the fact that I know he's hurt people, I would follow this man anywhere. "I'm planning something big," he says eventually, "and I need to know if you're in or out. I need to know if you're willing to be part of something that could change everything." "What kind of something?" I ask. "The kind of something that I can't tell you about until you commit to it," he says. "The kind of something that will either make us or destroy us. The kind of something that I've been building for the last 3 years, and it's finally coming together." "Then I'm in," I say immediately. "Whatever it is, I'm in." "You don't even know what you're committing to," Julian says. "I know you," I say. "And that's enough." He comes back to bed, and he holds me so tightly I can barely breathe. And in that moment, I understand that he's terrified, that underneath all the confidence and control, he's scared that this is going to end badly. "It's going to be okay," I whisper. "We're going to be okay." But even as I say it, I know I don't know that. I know I'm making promises I can't keep. I know I'm blindly committing to something that could destroy my life. I don't care. The next phase of my education happens slowly. Julian stops hiding his world from me. Not all of it. I don't think he ever fully reveals himself, but enough that I start to understand the shape of what he does. He works in financial crimes, not petty theft or organized crime in the traditional sense, but something far more sophisticated. He identifies wealthy people who have obtained their money illegally: drug trafficking, human trafficking, corruption, extortion. And then he systematically dismantles their empires. "We're Robin Hood?" I ask when he finally explains it. "We're not Robin Hood," Julian says firmly. "Robin Hood had moral clarity. I don't. We take their money, yes, but we don't give it to the poor. We use it to fund other operations. Operations that serve my interests, not anyone else's." "So you're a criminal who crimes against other criminals," I say. "Essentially, Julian says. What he doesn't tell me is who we is. I know he has a team. I know there are people who answer to him. I know that there are meetings that happen in conference rooms where decisions are made that affect thousands of lives. But I don't know their names. I don't know their faces. I don't know how many people are involved in this operation. And then one day, a woman appears in our apartment. She's beautiful, black, tall, wearing a suit that probably costs more than my car. And when she sees me, her expression shifts into something like disappointment. So this is the civilian, she says to Julian. Sarah, this is Amara, Julian says carefully. Amara is my chief counsel. She handles the legal side of things. The legal side of illegal things, Amara says, with a smirk. That's a contradiction in terms, but Julian loves contradictions. She settles onto the couch like she owns it, and I realize that this is someone Julian trusts, someone who knows him, someone who knows what he does. I need to talk to you, Amara says to Julian, and then she glances at me, alone. I leave the room, but I can hear their conversation through the cracked door. She's a liability, Amara is saying. She's a civilian. She doesn't know anything. She can't help you. All she can do is get in the way when things go bad. Things aren't going to go bad, Julian says. Things always go bad, Amara replies. That's why we prepare for bad. That's why we don't get personally involved with civilians who could testify against us if the FBI ever gets close. She wouldn't. She would, Amara interrupts. Not because she's a bad person, but because people always choose themselves over strangers, and right now, that's what we are to her. We're strangers. You might be more than that, but I'm definitely a stranger. And if the choice comes down to protecting you or protecting herself, she'll protect herself. Silence. Get her security clearance, Julian finally says. I want her to know everything. I want her to be truly part of this, not just hanging around the edges. That's insane, Amara says. That's my decision, Julian replies. Getting security clearance means a lot of things. It means understanding the full scope of Julian's operation. It means meeting the people who work for him. It means accessing files and documents and records of crimes so sophisticated I can barely comprehend them. It means understanding, in painful detail, exactly what kind of person Julian is. I learned that he's been operating for 15 years, that he's brought down 17 major criminals, that he's stolen, and that's the word, stolen, not redistributed, over $3 billion. I learned that 2 people have died in the course of his operations, not killed by him directly, but killed because of decisions he made. One was a cardiologist in Moscow who was using his position to identify rich patients and then extort them. The other was a human trafficking kingpin in Bangkok. Both of them died when Julian's operation exposed them, and the governments in their countries decided to prosecute. They would have killed thousands, Julian explains when I ask about them. The cardiologist was running a blackmail scheme that was devastating entire families. The trafficking kingpin was responsible for over 500 women disappearing over the years. But you didn't have the right to decide that, I say. You're not the law. You're not judge and jury. No, Julian agrees. That the actual law wasn't going to do anything. So I did. This is the moment where I should leave. This is the moment where I should realize that I'm in love with someone who has decided he's above the law. Someone who has appointed himself judge and executioner. Someone who is, by definition, exactly what he said he was, not a good man. But I don't leave. Because I also know that without Julian's operation, thousands of people would continue to suffer. Because I know that the law is imperfect and corrupt and often serves the people with the most money, not the people with the most need. Because I'm in love with a man who does terrible things in the service of a vision of justice that doesn't exist in the real world. I'm scared, I tell him that night. Of what? He asks. Of what this means, I say. Of what I'm becoming by being part of this. Of what happens if we get caught. Of what happens if this ends. It won't end, Julian says. You don't know that, I say. No, Julian agrees. I don't. But I know that I won't let anything happen to you. I know that you're protected in ways that most people can't even imagine. And I know that if this ends, I'll make sure you're safe. How? I ask. I have exit strategies, Julian says. I've planned for every scenario. If the FBI gets close, if someone betrays us, if anything goes wrong, I have a way to get you out. I have money hidden in accounts they'll never find. I have identities prepared for both of us. I have a plan. You've thought about this? I ask, surprised. I think about losing you constantly, Julian says. And I've prepared for every possibility, because losing you would be worse than anything else that could happen to me. 6 months into my security clearance, the operation launches. It's called Project Cassandra, and it's the biggest thing Julian's ever attempted. They're going after a network of corruption that runs through 3 different governments. They're targeting a criminal organization that makes traditional organized crime look quaint. They're dismantling an empire that's built on suffering. I'm not directly involved, but I help. I analyze data. I identify patterns. I contribute in small ways to something that feels world-changing. And then things go wrong. The FBI shows up at our apartment with a warrant. There are 16 agents. They come in the morning when Julian is in the shower. They separate us immediately, and I'm questioned for 12 hours about what I know, what I've done, what my relationship with Julian is. The agent, the same one who came to my apartment, what feels like a lifetime ago, leans back in his chair and smiles. You're going to prison, he says simply. You're an accessory to financial crimes, money laundering, conspiracy. We have documents. We have emails. We have evidence. I want a lawyer, I say. You're going to get one, the agent says. Here's the thing. If you testify against Julian Ashford, we can make this go away. We can make sure you never spend a day in prison. All you have to do is tell us everything you know about his operation. This is the moment. The moment that Amara predicted. The moment where I have to choose between protecting myself and protecting Julian. I want a lawyer, I repeat. I don't see Julian for 3 weeks. The lawyer, a woman named Catherine, who apparently works exclusively for Julian and costs more per hour than I make in a week, tells me that I've been charged with a litany of crimes, that without cooperation, I'm looking at years in prison. He's offering you a deal, Catherine says. Testify against Julian, and all charges are dropped. What about Julian? I ask. Julian is in a much worse position, Catherine says honestly. He's facing 40 years. They have him on everything. Then I'm not testifying, I say. Sarah, I'm not testifying, I repeat. I want to know what happens if I don't cooperate. You go to trial, Catherine says, and you probably lose. because the evidence is compelling, and you don't have a good defense, and you probably spend 5 to 10 years in prison. Okay, I say. Okay, Catherine repeats. You're okay with spending a decade in prison? I'm not okay with it, I clarify, but I'm not testifying against Julian. That evening, Catherine tells me that Julian has retained the best defense team money can buy, that he's confident, that he wants me to know that he's not going to let me go to prison, that he has a plan. What plan? I ask. I can't tell you, Catherine says, because attorney-client privilege is very important, and if I tell you, you could be subpoenaed and forced to testify about what I told you. But I can tell you that Julian is not going to let you sacrifice yourself for him. The trial lasts 3 months. It's a spectacle. The media calls Julian's operation the Robin Hood Ring, a group of vigilante financial criminals who've stolen from the wealthy and corrupt. Some of the stolen money did go to charitable causes, which Julian's lawyer makes very clear. Some of the people they took down were actual criminals operating in the gray spaces between legal and illegal. But some of what Julian did was also unambiguously illegal. He broke laws. He circumvented the judicial system. He appointed himself judge and executioner. The jury is out for 5 days. When they return, the verdict is guilty on 5 counts. But the judge, during sentencing, considers mitigating factors. The fact that many of the people Julian targeted were themselves criminals. The fact that he never resorted to violence. The fact that he was genuinely trying to address gaps in the legal system. Julian gets 15 years. When they read the sentence, he looks at me across the courtroom. And in that look, I see something break inside him. I'm taken into custody immediately. My trial is next month, and I still don't know what Julian's plan is. 3 days before my trial, I'm alone in my cell when a guard brings me a letter. From your lawyer, the guard says. It's not from Catherine. It's from Julian. Written in his careful handwriting. Sealed. Private. Sarah, by the time you read this, you'll know that I've taken full responsibility for everything. I've confessed to crimes I didn't commit. I've taken the blame for decisions that were made collectively. I've done whatever was necessary to ensure that the prosecutor has no case against you. The FBI doesn't have evidence that holds up without my testimony confirming it. They have documents and emails, but those are circumstantial. They have the word of underlings, but underlings can be discredited. What they don't have is a confession from you. They're going to offer you a deal. They're going to tell you that if you testify, all charges will be dropped. They're going to make it sound like the only reasonable choice. Don't take the deal. Go to trial. My lawyer has evidence of prosecutorial misconduct. He has witnesses who will testify that the evidence against you was planted. He has a strategy, and when you're acquitted, and you will be acquitted, you need to disappear. The money is in the account I told you about. The identities are in the safe deposit box. The plane tickets are non-refundable, but they're valid for a year. All you have to do is walk out of that courthouse and start your new life. I won't be part of that life. I can't be, but knowing that you're safe, knowing that you're free, knowing that you got out of this, that will be enough. I love you, Sarah. I've loved you since that night in the parking garage, and love means letting you go, Julian. I go to trial, and everything Julian said happens. The prosecutor's case falls apart under the weight of procedural errors. The evidence is ruled inadmissible. The charges are dropped. I'm released, and the courtroom applauds. Julian watches from the holding cell as they take me out. He looks at me one last time, and then he's gone. I'm living in Madrid under the name Elena Rossi. I teach piano at a private school. I have an apartment with a view of the city. I have a life that's quiet and small and beautifully ordinary. And every morning, I wake up and I'm grateful that I'm alive, that I'm free, that I chose to trust someone who loved me enough to sacrifice everything. Julian is in a federal prison in Pennsylvania. He served 2 years of his 15-year sentence. He'll be eligible for parole in 6 years if he maintains a clean record, which I know he will, because Julian is someone who plans ahead and follows through. But I don't wait for him, because that's not what he asked me to do. He asked me to live, to be happy, to build a life that has nothing to do with crime or danger or the spaces between legal and illegal. One day, I get a letter, no return address, postmarked from Washington, D.C. I open it with trembling hands. Elena, I hope you're happy. I hope you're playing piano. I hope you've forgotten about the man in the parking garage and the sophisticated criminal who couldn't resist saving you. But I also hope you remember us, not as criminals or victims, but as people who loved each other, people who made impossible choices, people who tried, in our flawed and imperfect way, to do something that mattered. I'm writing to tell you something you should know. The operation didn't end with my imprisonment. The team continued. Project Cassandra is still ongoing, and in the last 6 months, we've brought down 14 major criminals. We've freed over 200 people from trafficking situations. We've recovered over $500 million in stolen assets. I'm telling you this not to justify what I did, not to convince you that I was a good man doing good things, but to tell you that despite everything, we accomplished something real. We made a difference, and you were part of that. You saved me more than I ever saved you. You showed me that it was possible to love someone despite their darkness. You showed me that redemption might actually be real. You showed me that I didn't have to be only the terrible things I'd done. So this is my last letter. This is me letting you go completely. This is me saying that I'm grateful for the time we had together, and I'm even more grateful that you got out of it. Be happy, Elena. Be safe. Be the kind of person who remembers that love is possible, even in the darkest circumstances. Live the life I didn't get to live, and maybe, someday, that will feel like enough. Julian. I fold the letter carefully and place it in a box with the other letters he sent over the 2 years since my acquittal. 18 letters total. One every month, like clockwork, like a promise kept even from prison. I don't write back, because he asked me not to, because communication could complicate things, because some love stories are only complete when one person lets the other one go. But that night, I sit at the piano in my Madrid apartment and I compose something new. A piece called The Arrangement. It tells the story of a woman and a man who found each other in the darkness and gave each other permission to become whole. The piece is beautiful, and it's also heartbreaking, because it's about a love that couldn't survive in the real world. A love that had to sacrifice itself to survive. I think about Julian in his prison cell. I think about how he chose me over his freedom. I think about how he's spending 15 years paying for crimes he committed, partially to protect me. I think about how I'll never see him again, and I play, pouring everything I have into the keys, because music is the only way I know how to say goodbye to someone I loved more than I loved myself. The last note rings out in the darkness, and I finally understand what Julian meant when he said that love means letting someone go. It means trusting that they'll be okay without you. It means believing that they deserve to be happy, even if that happiness doesn't include you. It means playing the most beautiful song you can, and then walking away and never looking back.